Welcome back to a new episode of Bespin Global talks around cloud and services that can be used in the cloud. Joining me today is our great team. Start by introducing yourself, Wael.
Hi everyone, my name is Wael Al-Araj. I'm the operations manager at Bespin Global. I'm managing the DevOps and data team. I have with me my colleague Hamza.
Hello everyone, this is Hamza. I'm a solutions architect at Bespin Global. I have been working on AWS services for 5 years, and my friend here Bilal.
And I'm Bilal. I'm a senior account manager. I'm from the commercial team, and I'm also a certified solution architect from AWS.
And me, Mouteih Chaghlil, CEO of Bespin Global Middle East and Africa. I'll be your host today in this talk around security. So cloud security today is one of the top major concerns and points that businesses look for to solve in this digital transformation journey they're going through, which was highly accelerated due to COVID and all of the situation that COVID, put on businesses on going digital, working from office, all of those points. And AWS says security is day zero job. So security is something you need to build in your application, in your digital service from day zero. So you cannot just say, I'll deploy the app, I'll deploy my e-commerce website, and then it's having security issues, whether that's from a compliance, whether that's from a cyber attacks, whether that's from is your customer's data secured and so on. And here I would love to listen to you, gentlemen. Like, what is the market today? How is the market reacting to those security concerns, and how customers are approaching them?
I think one of the key things you said is the fact that the pandemic kind of accelerated that, right? I mean, before the pandemic, security was always a big concern, and I think UAE and KSA were some of the top countries that were being targeted for different types of cyber attacks. With the pandemic and forcing people to work remotely, it changed the way we work. It forced companies to adopt new ways immediately. Maybe they weren't able to kind of run the tests that they wanted to ensure that they are compliant, whether it's internal or industry-specific requirements in terms of security compliance. But yeah, so things are different, and they need to keep an eye on security, especially with the way things are changing immediately.
So Hamza, you're a certified AWS security specialist. So from what we've been hearing for the last 6 months from the market, like, what is let's say the top 3, 5, or 10 security points or topics that are on top of the agenda of those businesses?
Actually, when we are talking about cyber security attacks or the security in general, we should talk about the ransomware, which we had many attacks during the COVID-19 and before COVID-19. But I believe the business and the market now more understand the value of security during all these attacks. So, for example, if we want to talk about the ransomware, which is, if you want to simplify, it's type of attack which you cannot access your PC or your data, which will be unavailable until you pay money or Bitcoins to the hacker.
Absolutely. So just to simplify it, so someone will go into my, whether that's my personal laptop, or if it's in the situation of an enterprise or into the data center, they'll encrypt or let's say lock, so you cannot access that data, and then they'll ask you to pay a certain amount of money, whether that's cash money or Bitcoin, which is usually the case.
Business is kidnapped.
Yeah, absolutely, it's kidnapped. And we also saw a new trend. So previously, ransomware attackers will just say, pay me money and I'll give you your data back. But in certain situations, we saw, no, not only that, you need to pay me that amount of money within a certain period of time, 24, 48 hours. If not, I'll publish your data publicly on the internet. You know, your financial figures, your customer data, your maybe, you know, some type of IP, all of that valuable information is now publicly available.
Especially now, the data itself for some businesses, it's a critical asset for it. So
imagine like pharmaceuticals, right? They're creating new medicines with specific mixes, or I don't know.
Absolutely, they're developing the new COVID.
Exactly. So I can imagine that's probably one of the things that that's happening currently. And of course, even think from a retailer's perspective, you're kind of creating a new fashion design for a new shoe or something. And I mean, some countries would love to stick their hands on that.
And then you've got the financial institutes, which is even more and more government institutes, all of that having their data, exposed. And so this even came now more with the risks that remote workspaces or, working remotely, a lot of enterprises and businesses within a very short of period of time, they needed to enable all of their employees to access data remotely, whether that's through VPN or, secure channels and something like that. And that just exposed the whole infrastructure or data centers into the public internet.
So exactly, Mouteih. So COVID-19 actually forced the enterprise and the most of the business to go and work online. So the challenge that everyone have now, that there is no full experience how to trade or deal with this online services or how to work remotely with a secure way, which impact a lot of business. So for example, now you need to rely on many applications for meetings instead of physical meetings. You need to share your data through online and on internet.
Absolutely, and even the devices, like a lot of enterprises, you couldn't even take your device back home. And now you're required to bring your own device where you're using your iPads, maybe your laptops and so on to keep on working and securing that device, even if it's in your house, you forgot maybe to lock the screen, you forgot maybe to end the conversation, and then that data is exposed. You're in a cafe, maybe you want a calm place to work in. You're at the cafe, but that screen is now exposed to everyone. So again, this comes as another challenge today we see in the market, is how do I do this remote working situation? What else, do you think points today are on the top of the agenda?
Actually, also, due COVID-19, many of us rely on e-commerce to buy new stuff, new things, clothes, or anything. So the huge traffic or huge load on the e-commerce websites has been increased dramatically. So the type of attacks also has been increased on this website, and it was hard to identify the healthy request from another type of attacks. Like, for example, here we can talk about the Ddos Attack, the most famous attack for the e-commerce.
And so here, just to clarify it for our audiences, DDoS is an abbreviation for distributed denial of service, and this is where hackers will have control of a lot of endpoints on the internet, and they will all start generating huge amount of traffic on an e-commerce website or a digital service till it goes down. And this type of attack is very hard to control because, as you mentioned, you cannot distinguish between what is a legit request and what is a DDoS request. And sometimes even DDoS will be, we had the situation where the customer himself was DDoS attacking himself. And that is why, because he had bots scraping his websites, he's introducing new stuff. A lot of teams are monitoring that website, and they're generating traffic that they don't need to have, because they're unable to control who's accessing what.
I think this is a very important point. So you have to distinguish whether this is a good bot or a bad bot. Is this a real traffic or something coming from DDoS attack. So identifying the request itself, it's a very important point here, and there are a lot of services to do that on AWS also.
Exactly. So here the beauty of the cloud when we are talking about these types of attack, either ransomware or DDoS attack. For example, if you are talking about the DDoS attack, AWS, Amazon Web Services can introduce to us like the CDN.
Yes, absolutely. So we mentioned three here. So we mentioned the ransomware attacks, data protection, the remote working, internet cybersecurity. What other points do you think are today on top of the agenda of security when it comes to security?
Like we can talk about the encryption for the data. And
this is part of, I think, the compliance again.
Data and compliance, exactly.
Data and compliance.
For example, some businesses require like a specific type of compliance, like PCI DSS or HIPAA, depends on the business environment. If you are talking about pharmacy or you are talking about like e-commerce with the payment gateway or not.
Fintech, absolutely, fintech now.
Exactly.
You know, fintech, the compliance is, I think, one of the biggest challenges they're facing, and especially when we discuss stuff like data locality, encryption, compliance with the GDPR, and we know that a lot of that, similar data protection practice is being now applied in locally in each country.
Of course, and definitely one of the main things that's going on a rise due to the pandemic is fintech businesses, right? With contactless payments, being able to transfer money. I mean, the different requirements for fintech, and it's definitely one of the most complex regulations around fintech environments. So, of course, compliance is always a concern for a lot of the new and existing fintech businesses. I think there's a lot of things that come into compliance, whether it's PCI or encryption of data or encryption of customer data or GDPR. So those are definitely
absolutely end-to-end encryption and so on. And
I believe here we can introduce the beauty of cloud and what the features can give it to us comparing to data center if you want to host like fintech or e-commerce or any type of enterprise rely on a specific data compliance.
Yeah, I think also one of the points we discussed is currently a lot of customers are under attack. They're losing money because of the attacks, but they don't know it even.
They are not aware of that.
Absolutely, because they don't have the threat detection, proper monitoring system, proper logging systems to tell them that you are under attack. Someone is abusing your website, they're stealing your content, all of that stuff.
Some of those cases are not just in terms of losing revenue just during the time where there's the attack. But some businesses never recover from this, right? A fintech, for example, if it got hit by a ransomware attack, and for example, I'm using some kind of application and they're attacked and my information is compromised, I'm never going to use that application again. And word will come out that other customers will not use that application anymore. It could be the end of an entire
absolutely. They can take it to bankruptcy. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, MC, they cannot distinguish if this is like increase in business itself or it's like types of attack. So instead of that, they increase the infrastructure itself, which increase the cost on the business.
Yeah, and I think this comes to the wrong assumption that all I need to run a digital service today is just I'll find a good development team. They'll develop that website or that digital service for me. I'll just host it, and I assume it's secured. But security is something that is ongoing. Every day we're faced with new types of attacks, more and more intelligent hackers. Sometimes even security is something that you need to handle internally. That doesn't mean like your employees will do the security breach, but they might be part of it without them knowing. For example, absolutely, social engineering, phishing emails, not verifying stuff, sharing credentials, over unsecured channels, all of that stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
This is a very common example.
Or like sometimes, one of the customers, for example, like all of those passwords are on an Excel file that is shared, with his team, and like, do you think this is good? Like one Excel file can, just
Destroy you.
full access to that environment. And this is something we're seeing. So practices like, password policy, password rotation, end-to-end encryption, all of that stuff is not there.
So really it comes down to like three different factors, right? The culture, like the people, the way that they understand. They're aware of the importance of the data and the passwords and keeping control of that. Secondly, it comes into the processes in terms of how to share, how to do things. And then also the technology itself. And of course then there's the internal and the external factors of breach, right? Whether
Yep.
it from, like you said, all the examples that you used as well.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, it's not only about maybe going out of business. Sometimes if you breach of compliance, like it can just destroy that whole business in a second.
And I believe, MC, the problem here is the majority of people think like the security, it's so expensive to deploy and implement on the infrastructure. Like, because if you wanted to compare it between cloud and the legacy data center.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that assumption is correct because, as you mentioned, they used they're basing that assumption on whatever was before 10 years ago, 5 years ago. But today, everything is evolving very quickly.
Exactly. So you can just implement many of security services like encryption, like
Ddos Attack
Attack mitigation, WAF, and any other services with no upfront cost.
I love the fact that you've mentioned, Hamza, about the, like understanding like the DDoS, for example, right? Where you're getting a lot of traffic. An e-commerce website could think this is something that's really good. Hey, I'm getting a lot of traffic to make a lot of money. But then what happens, you realize this is malicious. So I think like besides all of that, you need to have the right visibility on everything, right? So that's where all the tools come in, all the tools, the services that are available from AWS, not just from protection perspective, but also giving you the visibility and the monitoring, the continuous monitoring of your infrastructure and understanding what's happening.
Yeah. So we had this situation where, a customer was saying like, hey, I don't save any credit card info in my website. I'm using a third-party payment gateway. But he then discovered that payment gateways will not only charge you for successful payments, they also charge you for a number of unsuccessful. So if a hacker, wants to put you at risk at your business, he'll just start doing more and more requests on your behalf to that payment gateway, and now you're being charged for that. Similar to that is hacking, maybe being able to use your servers to perform DDoS attacks. Now you're paying for those that network traffic, those CPU cycles, and you're part of an attack. Your IPs are going to be blacklisted. You won't be able to recover. Your domain will have bad reputation.
Mm-hmm. So basically, this will impact the business itself, the cost, and the infrastructure itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the risk here is, so most of the people think that if I'm going to apply security, and then that will, reduce my speed to market because security is complex. Every time I need to share a password, I need to do certain stuff. I need to do it in a certain way, and that will just, make me go slower into market. But just understanding the risk it comes with. That is massive. You can be out of business in a day if you don't cover those securities. So tell us more, Hamza. Like, okay, let's say I'm running today my application on the cloud, and it's let's say it's a simple digital service. Nothing so complex around it and around the compliance. How can I, approach securing that workload?
So actually on cloud or any AWS specific, we are starting the security journey from the beginning, starting from create account until starting the production or creating the infrastructure itself. For example, like enable the multi-factor authentication on the account itself so no one can access it or have access, so he can just create the resources, start Bitcoins mining, and we had a similar story like that. When we are talking about digital marketing or any like e-commerce or business hosting on AWS. For example, we can use, as we mentioned, the encryption for the data at rest or in transit, which is it has been like a headache for the data center. It take like I don't know, the project 6-7 months on AWS. You just can encrypt your data within 5-10 minutes, 3-4 clicks. When we are talking, for example, like if it's a website and you want to use like SSL certificate, AWS provide you with a free SSL certificate, white card, instead of go and buy and do all this process to gain the SSL certificate. Talking about the DDoS attack and ransomware, we can introduce, like we have the CDN and WAF, which is a protect layer to your application, can give you like a filtering to distinguish the normal attack from the normal behavior of customers. And when we are talking about like logging and investigate the network log that you have, we can have like VPC log and integrated with Guard Duty, which give you like inside visibility about with this request, and like if you have any type of malicious or malware in your system.
But let's go back to the DDoS. DDoS
like
is
DDoS, huh?
yeah, because today it is one of the top points, but I don't think a lot of people are aware of how easy is it to add DDoS attack mitigation to both your layer 3 and layer 4. Get that protection easily from AWS. It doesn't require any interaction from the user. Like if I just activate.
Exactly. So basically, AWS give us like a managed WAF rules, which can enable based on your business. For example, there is a managed WAF for WordPress. If you are using a WordPress, there is a managed rules for SQL injection. There is a managed rule.
Yeah, the OWASP top 10, pod detection, all of that. Yeah, and you can just activate it very easily. You can buy those rules from the AWS marketplace, attach them to your WAF, and you're up and running. Like, you don't need to be a full-fledged security expert, and have all of that knowledge and skills. It's just easy to deploy because AWS gives you this possibility of using building blocks. I can activate the WAF and then later on, enhance its capabilities, fine-tune those rules and so on.
Exactly. In addition, that you don't need to do anything on your application to modify it or do any changing on it. So it's like the WAF or the security service from AWS, it's complete separated from your application. So you can enable whatever you want without impact your application itself.
So now going back to your point, so from the moment I sign up into AWS, there is certain security measures that I need to do. As you mentioned, we've got the MFA, we've got maybe not using your AWS root account. It's the way how you lay out your VPCs, set up the firewalls. We saw a lot of customers that like the whole infrastructure, the database, the application layer, the web, all of that is running on a single security group, or because it's complex or something like that, they're allowing public access into their databases, or their assets on S3 are not protected because they didn't take the extra mile on securing that.
Exactly. So basically, as AWS recommended and we are recommended, that we are not using a root user for the production or any interact with the AWS console. It's just for create the user with a specific privilege and restrict the privilege for each user. In addition to use like IAM rules services on AWS instead of using the normal user, and to simplify what are the IAM rules on AWS, it's just like give the services the ability to talk with another service without using an API keys.
So, Wael, can you tell us more about, let's say, practical examples or practical cases where, let's map an AWS service to a practical case. So, I know, for example, you can tell us about like the situation where a customer will have an AWS account separate for each stage. So he has a development account, he has a staging account, and he has an account only for production. For example, what practical service he can use to control those?
AWS recommends to have individual accounts for security and compliance best practices. So you can isolate your business, you can isolate your applications in different accounts. On top of that, there will be the organization where you can centrally manage the cost, compliance, and security stuff. Absolutely.
So instead of like managing one account where developers, QAs, and production is running, just segregate them and you have visibility on who's running what, and you can apply different policies for those accounts.
AWS recommends having individual accounts for your application for security and compliance best practices. So instead of having all of your applications, all of your environments in one account, and all of the team have access into that account, you can have AWS account for each application, and on top of that, the organization will be where you can centrally, you have centralized place where you can manage your cost, security, and compliance stuff.
Yeah, and I think this comes even more and more when you're outsourcing. So I can give the outsourcing company access to the dev and the staging environment, which runs on two separate accounts, okay? But production, it's only me, the business owner, that has access to that production account, and this ensures that, outsourcing or third-party providers are unable to control my account, and I don't need to manage all of their access and so on. And I think this is also part, even though it's outside of the security, which is the topic of this talk today, but this also comes to cost. Sometimes a customer will be paying 20K, 30K, and he doesn't understand where that cost is happening. There might be an instance that, or some resources that a developer has spinned up, but they forgot to turn it off.
Absolutely. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? Whether the teams are internal or you're outsourcing, splitting the accounts for different teams or different parties or different applications, it just gives you more visibility on what that specific application is spending, whether it's vulnerable to specific things, from compliance, from security.
And here's where you can apply different policies.
Exactly. So for example, as MC mentioned, imagine if you have multiple teams working on multiple AWS accounts, and you won't have like insight monitoring who did this, when that happened. So here we can introduce CloudTrail services from AWS, which give you like the visibility to monitor and check which API or which actions has been taken on AWS services, like delete, create, etc.
So it gives you the visibility of not just what different teams are doing, but what are people within those teams are doing, right? Yeah. If you ever want to check somebody by mistake deleted a specific thing, then you want to know who was that person and when did it actually happen. It gives you that. So I think
full audit, yeah. And I think it even comes with an extra file that shows you if someone played around with the logs.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So you can validate the logs.
That exactly. Those logs has not been played around.
Audit the
audit. Absolutely. And I think here comes also the beauty of CloudWatch.
Exactly. So basically, CloudWatch, it's a service from AWS, give you like a dashboard or a way to centralize your logging and metrics in one place. So let's assume we have like servers are hosting on AWS, and you want to like have a centralized monitoring for log and metrics, or the developer team wants a specific access or error logs from the servers. So usually that you access to the server, check where the logs pass, get these logs and send it to the team. But instead of this headache, AWS can provide you with CloudWatch, so you can send all your logs on all servers to one place, CloudWatch. So they can have like a dashboard to monitor and
centralized visibility
exactly, visibility, which when that happened, on which server, And
Of course, and I think the good thing about CloudWatch is the fact that it doesn't just act as a way to log everything that's happening, record everything that's happening. It's also a way for you to be able to go back and verify, right? Let's say somewhere in the future we found out, some of the cyber attacks that we hear about, some of those companies don't even know that they've been hacked for so many years. So later on, you want to be able to go back and look at the logs of when did it actually happen. You can always go back. That's also one of the features.
And here, just geeking out, if you mix all of those services we are talking about, so organization, CloudTrail, CloudWatch, I can use organizations to ensure CloudTrail is running on all of my accounts, so that's development, staging, and production. And then I take that log, instead of looking into those lines, I'll just push them into CloudWatch, and then I can set up an alarm, a filter, absolutely. So if someone tried to log into my AWS account for 10 times with a failure, it can raise an alarm directly to my team. And what is nice about CloudWatch is it's not only an email, it can be a webhook. So it can raise a ticket for you. It can even send a SMS, maybe talk to your team on a certain channel on Microsoft Teams or Microsoft Slack and so on.
Exactly. In addition to that, you have the ability to add an action based on these logs or metrics. So for example, as MC mentioned, if someone trying to access your AWS account for many times, you can just take an action to check if the password policy has been enabled on the account or not.
Absolutely.
Or you can take, for example, if you have a specific server or metrics unhealthy for any reason.
So let's say practical. So for example, CloudWatch. Now I'm sending the logs of my web server into CloudWatch, and a simple thing, we do this a lot with our customers, is I want to log every time someone's tried to access the administrative or the admin page of that website, because, that is part of, and it's as simple as just, as you mentioned, sending the logs to CloudWatch, creating a metric, and then I have the alarm. Comes with a lot of information, like the IP, the timestamp, all of that, so I can block it.
Exactly. So at the end, this gives you the ability to understand more your application and the behavior of the application, so you can take decision in the future how you want to increase or decrease your capacity of the infrastructure itself.
Yeah, and I think this brings up a very key important thing, right? When it comes to technology and especially security, is that we need to be more proactive rather than reactive. You don't want to know once something goes wrong, but you want to know as it's happening. You want to get the alarm. You want to be able to know right away, right? So real-time notifications, real-time visibility on what's happening, and being able to drill down more deep in terms of what is actually happening.
Exactly. One more thing, talking about CloudWatch, I just want to mention, even if your application is hybrid model like you have on your data center on the cloud, AWS CloudWatch gives you the ability to install an agent on your machine wherever it is, on another cloud provider or data center.
Now it's just an API.
And you can just have the same logs, metrics, and features from the EC2. You can just have it on your on-prem.
And I don't think that is only for CloudWatch. We've got another service where you can, run checks on-prem and in the cloud, which was the AWS Inspector. Yes.
Exactly. Yes.
Inspector is a vulnerability assessment tool. It's a powerful vulnerability assessment tool. The only thing you have to do is just to install an agent, tag the instance, and that's it. You run the assessment. You have many type of runs. You can select the template that you want to evaluate. It will go check those CVEs databases and return back to you with a detailed report where all of the problems are there and suggestions and recommendation how to solve all of those stuff.
So it's all within the same ecosystem.
Exactly, 100%. And the beauty of Inspector, it can provide you with any OS that you are using, either Linux, Windows. And as MSC mentioned, you can use it on the EC2 or on the data center. So at the end of the day, instead of go and check if there is any update, any vulnerability, a new...
So just to make it clear to our audience, so now today, if I have a machine running, I don't need to go hire a third-party auditor. That will cost me a ton of money just to do that vulnerability assessment. I'll install the AWS Inspector agent on my machine. I'll go to the service, asks for what exactly I need to be checking. So whether that's, as you mentioned, CVEs, which is Common Vulnerability Database, or maybe certain stuff related to the OS itself. So you've got, maybe a security risk will exist for Windows 2016, but wouldn't be there in 2019. And Inspector knows all of that. And then it generates a PDF document for me that I can share with my team. Even me as a business owner, I can go through. And once we fix that, it's just a matter of rerunning that assessment, and I have again my vulnerability, instead of me relying on a third party, paying them a ton of money, scheduling meetings and all of that.
And even more, MC, you can also integrate it with the system manager. So even the update for our patch for the Windows or OS or any other third party application on your system, it can be updated automatically without zero action from you.
And I'm sure that whatever patches I require is there using System Manager.
Exactly. And for example, like if you have 100 or 1,000 of servers, you have the ability to make sure that the all patches have the same version on the all applications. So you will not have any other.
So tell us also a little bit about how do I control access to what? So, with a big team, you've got a lot of team members accessing those Amazon accounts. So customers would love to have that granularity of, who has access to what and what permissions do they have to perform actions on in AWS.
Exactly. So here, when we are talking about the user and what they can do or what actions they can access on AWS, we are talking about the IAM on AWS, which give you the ability to create.
So IAM stands for?
Identity Access Management. Give you the ability.
For example, now, like let's say I'm using S3, and I've got my marketing team, and I've got my security team, and then I've got maybe my finance team. So using IAM, I can restrict access, saying only finance team can access this S3 bucket, and only marketing can edit that. But IT should be able to read all of them without changing any stuff. And that is provided by IAM.
Exactly. So you have the list privilege with a specific policy for each team based on a group.
And is it only restricted to users, like, end users, or does it also provide that for other aspects when it comes to security governance?
It's support the users as a console users, which or for the developer like programmatic access. It's also give you the ability to give a specific privilege on the even programmatic access, not even like a console access.
But it's also for resources as well, right? So it's also managing which resources can speak to each other, right? So you can set roles of each resource and what it can do and how it can speak to other resources on AWS.
Exactly. So for example, let's assume we have a web server, want to get any information or data from S3 bucket. So to limit or put like a restriction to this server to talk to a specific S3 bucket, we can also use the IAM service or Identity Access Management service to do this.
And this is done by, creating a role and then attaching that role into the resource. And now you don't even need to maintain username or credentials or tokens, because the resource itself in AWS is being authenticated by IAM to use that service, and this reduces your security risks and also reduces the operational overhead of maintaining those security, all of those credentials and so on.
MC, even if you are using the Identity Access Management rules, CloudTrail services, as we mentioned, has the ability to check which action or
key was being used.
Key has been used on this, so it's not only for users itself. It's also have the ability for.
So let's say, for example, I create an API token or a programmatic access token, and I give it maybe to a third-party provider or maybe to an outsourced team. Using CloudTrail, I can look exactly into that event, when, how, what changed, all of that stuff.
I think you were mentioning something about key rotations, and I know that's one of the key concerns. The continuous security updates and changing passwords and key rotations. So how is that done? That's not from. I don't think that's from the IAM. I think that's something else.
Exactly. So the IAM credentials or Identity Access Management credentials, the API keys, it's also part of IAM service. The difference here now, AWS recommended always to use the identity access management rules when you can. But in some cases, like MC mentioned, if you have a third party or you want to use it, for example, on your on-prem or any other custom application, you will be forced to use the API keys using the IAM. So AWS also recommended to rotate these keys like every 19 days or any other policy. And here, to make sure that, for example, you have 10, 20 or 100 keys, to manage or to always have like insight which keys need to rotate, we can introduce like a service from AWS. It's called Aws Config, which gives you the ability to know which keys need to rotate or not, and if your account in a healthy state or not.
Yeah. And I think this is funny because Bespin Global is an authorized, well-architected review partner. And one of the biggest pillars, or one of the main pillars in the well-architected, is the security. And we all know that the smallest finding in a security pillar.
Absolutely. In order to achieve that well-architected framework, you have to pass that security part. And it's a huge part, starting from IAM, securing your root account, managing keys, how do you rotate keys, how frequently you do that, did you apply configuration and compliance check, maybe config, do you have any other tool to do the same issue, are you monitoring your traffic, do you have like automatic remediation?
Yeah, so I think we'll be having another talk about well-architected, but what is nice about that is we had a lot of customers that, let's say, didn't pass the well-architected, but they were able to remediate all of those using native AWS services, without an upfront huge investment into solutions or, into a lot of hours of consultation and security,
Highlighting those services.
In general, when you go to enable anything related to security, there is a huge amount of work to do. You have to get an appliance, you have to configure your application, you have to configure your server, a lot of integration and connectivity stuff. Whenever there is a change, you have to maintain everything from scratch. But the beauty of AWS services is that ecosystem is a highly dynamic system.
Yeah.
Everything is highly configured. You have a central place where all of those, you have a very good visibility on every single security service in your account.
And of course, it's given that it's that, because well-architected, which is the best practice of AWS, the 5 main pillars, and one of the pillars is security. So of course, one of the key things that they have as part of the ecosystem of the building blocks of AWS Cloud is the fact that all the security services that they have, including the ones that you've mentioned.
Exactly. So I believe the beauty of AWS services is not just give you the ability to secure your infrastructure, it's also give you the ability to secure your data. So for example, let's assume one of our customers want to enable the PCI compliant on AWS. You can use, for example, a service from AWS called AWS Security Hub, which give you like a dashboard to guide you which services you need to enhance and which services you need to enable to get this compliance.
Okay, so it can recognize which compliance you're trying to achieve,
exactly,
and what are the gaps that you have.
Instead of reading like a bunch of PDF
and hiring third-party auditors,
and every single PDF is related to specific version of the OS and specific version of the patch of the OS. Instead of digging around all of those stuff,
it's already there.
Days and nights of reading and doing all of those stuff, you have a guide there.
Yeah.
It evaluates the environment from PCI, let's say, for example, the same example that Hamza mentioned, from PCI DSS perspective, it's evaluate the environment and start giving you hints where you have to fix some stuff to achieve that goal.
And the beauty of Security Hub also, it has been integrated with many services from AWS, like Aws Config that we already mentioned, Aws Guard Duty. I don't know if we already talked about Guard Duty or not. So basically, Aws Guard Duty is a service from AWS give you the ability to have insight of your logs, network logs, VPC logs, and the CloudTrail logs to know if you have like malicious or malware in your system, and do like machine learning from their side to give you a hint on which server you should check on which port.
Hamza, those were valuable insights on how customers can leverage AWS security services to secure their workloads today in the cloud. And Bilal, can you tell our audiences why they should trust Bespin Global in securing their workloads running in the AWS cloud?
Yeah, so Bespin Global is to summarize it, we're a cloud enabler. We're a public cloud enabler. We've been around since 2015, headquartered in Korea. We also have offices in China, Singapore, and Dubai. Dubai operations started in 2019, September 2019, where we have our own service delivery team based in Dubai to deliver our services to the Middle East and Africa region. And of course, Wael is our operations manager, Hamza, and you met some of the team. And part of our services is not just the security part and just certain components, but we help you in the entire adoption of public cloud. We help you from the consulting, sitting down, brainstorming, understanding your business requirements, understanding your challenges, and coming up with a solution, designing a solution, and actually implementing that solution. And then, of course, as we've always mentioned, that it's not something that you just implement and leave, but there's continuous new technologies being introduced by AWS and new requirements coming by your business, and of course, regulations are always changing. So you need a team that is always there for you to support you, and that's also part of our managed services. We continuously maintain and support your cloud environments.
And here to mention, we're AWS Premier Partner, AWS DevOps Competency, AWS Migration and MSP Certified Partner.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of our achievements, of course, besides our AWS capabilities specifically, we've been recognized by Gartner specifically on the public and public cloud professional and managed services for 3 years in a row, where we've shown our growth in our capabilities, knowledge, and experience, where we've moved from niche players to challengers to leaders in 2020 among the big players. And of course, we understand the market and we understand what is required. And of course, our founders have the vision of the adoption of multi-cloud due to the fact that business requirements are become more complex. So what we've done is we've actually developed our own IP, our own intellectual property of something called Ops Now, which is a multi-cloud management platform capable of helping you in your compliance requirements, from asset management, cost management of your workloads across different clouds from a single centralized platform. And
so,
I think that summarizes it.
And how can our audiences get in contact with you?
Yeah, so you can reach out to us. You can reach out to me or any of us on our LinkedIn profiles. You can reach out to us on our website or call 800 Bespin.
From the UAE. Yeah. So I think this concludes our talk today around AWS security and what services and what use cases are covered. So thanks a lot. Thanks to our audience for joining this talk, and thanks for the team for the insights, and looking forward for you to join us in our next webinars. Thank you. Bye.